behavior, and preferences of ordinary people, as expressed through their spending patterns, are conditioned by two factors. The first is the relative price of goods and services. The second is media content. Price and media change consumer notion of value and behavior. As powerful instruments, their critical role in the cultivation of G&H values and behavior needs to be fully appreciated. Unfortunately, prices and media content at the moment do not reflect the real environmental and social costs on the psychological, communal, cultural, and other costs. As a result, the choices people make have little to do with creating real value or promoting behaviors that engender happiness within a sustainable environment. I believe it is imperative that full-cost national accounting, which takes into account, among other things, an ecological footprint analysis, becomes mainstream practice. Such a new form of accounting should fully reflect cultural, social, and ecological costs, as I have often urged and as outlined in the recent Sarkozy Commission's report. This will allow us to arrive at realistic costs of goods and services, leading to determination of a more accurate pricing system, which in turn can become the basis for a more meaningful and truly responsible fiscal system. Of all the strokes that went into the painting of the last century, let me repeat again. Of all the strokes that went into the painting of the last century, two brushes provided the most defining lines. First, it was democracy, and second, it was the abrasive stroke of GDP. Quite appropriately, 20th century may be referred to as a century of democratization and a period of GDP fetish. While the former has done much to promote individual right and freedom, the latter brought worshippers of all faiths, Christians, Jews, Muslims, Hindus, Buddhists, etc., to kneel before the altar of consumerism in the cathedral of the omniscient market. GDP was adopted unquestioningly as the indicator to measure the growth of economies, whereby human individuals have been reduced. Human individuals have been reduced to consumer entities, and progress of societies understood to mean just economic growth. It has been assumed that as economies grow, people become happier, even if it means growing inequity, more pollution, crime, or disease. What matters under the ethos of GDP is production and consumption of goods transacted on the canvas of markets. Nothing is to come in the way of the free market, and democracy served to bring down resistance to the dominance of the market. Speaking of democracy and freedom, government policies have to respond to deliberative preferences and choices of the people. These are influenced by the public criteria we adopt and popularize as indicating success. It is in this context that we need to question whether the public criteria of success associated with GDP are serving us well, and whether they are orienting us towards good governance and development. Economic growth, measured in GDP, and the emphasis on economic efficiency has given rise to the highest ever level of aggregate wealth in the world. Yet, the absolute number of victims of poverty and their vulnerability to all kinds of threats are at a peak. Not only natural calamities are striking with greater fury and frequency because of collapsing biodiversity and climate change, many other man-made disasters resulting from systemic failures of our macroeconomic structure have begun to affect all of us who are integrated in a world globalized by trade and finance. Even the rich are not immune, as clearly demonstrated by the global financial crisis, which exposed the illusory nature of wealth, as GDP would have us define. For far too long, GDP and the market have deluded us into thinking that they are the measures and source of our well-being. We have all been under their influence and pressure to evaluate our national performance and social preferences within the framework of growth mania. Any upward movement in GDP figures meant success for society, and any higher approval rating for government and leaders. Let me repeat, we have cared too little to understand that what is measured is largely the sum of goods and services produced and exchanged in the marketplace, which in turn are communicated in quantitative and relative terms. That's all that GDP does. Such information convey nothing about crime, drug abuse, suicide, traffic accidents, stability of family, integrity of our ecology, justice and equity, and above all, the level of happiness among our people. Because we have become economic animals and have abandoned our reasoning to GDP, herd mentality, we have lost sight of the other more important changes and events that actually mean more to human beings. It is time to change this set of public success criteria. To this end, we must find the will and utilize the genius within us to develop and adopt a more truthful and humanistic definition of wealth and growth that would encompass the values for which we ought to strive. We need to redefine wealth. What does being wealth really mean? What, in truth, is really prosperity? And what should growth mean from here on? We need to examine this. We need to, I think, find new definitions, holistic definitions. These should be measured in terms of the value domains within which society can, for all times, abound and prosper amid happiness. I would humbly like to submit that Bhutan has been propelling its national development through 4 strategies commonly known as the 4 pillars of G&H. These, in turn, are founded on 9 value domains or dimensions, such as mental well-being, community vitality, cultural resilience, balanced time use, and environmental awareness, so on. These, in turn, are broken down into 72 measurable variables, which, when aggregated, form the National Happiness Indicator.